I found this really good stone the other day. It will make a perfect scraper once it's hammered and its edge is split and chipped. I picked it up out of the dry gully and I felt how smooth and warm it would be. I could imagine how it would weigh in my hand when I held it in the semi-dark of the hut in front of the smoky fire. I imagined I had a skin to work, spread across my knees, and Net was playing with Daisy. Not that my brother plays with his little sister much these days, but I could see us all, and it was as proper as the stone itself, and as right as the fire and the gift of the boar's rough hide. I knew how the scraper would move and pare the flesh and the fat away in curls. It's strong and heavy and so much a part of the world. Then, well, it was very odd, but it made me think about how things remain. After we are gone, I mean. How it will be when Daisy holds it. And maybe she would be a really, really old woman by then, like Auntie Prim was. I thought how she'll feel the weight of the stone in those days as much as I do now, holding it in the soft darkness of the hut, by the fire, feeling the edge lift the flesh and the fat. And me, by then I will have crossed to the other place and I'll be off through the dark. Like a leaf, dropped in the stream, pulled down and tossed and tumbled and lost in the sea in the deep black. I'll be gone. But I'm not the world. The world will be the weight of this warm stone that my sister will hold in her hand. My world will be the coal black, and the darkness will fit me and I will fit it, and maybe it will be like a different stone in my hand. I felt sad when I thought about those strange things, but then I remembered that afterwards they will come, all of them, and they'll talk to me. The Sky Machine by Martin Liddermont, performed by Phoebe Lawrence. Season 2, Chapter 1, The Thing. Hello, Mum. Sorry it's been so long. Oh, it's so good to see you. I know it's late this time, but the ceremony didn't happen when it was supposed to because the bread wouldn't rise, and then it did, but the flour was off and people were ill, and then there was this big storm, which I told them about, of course, and everything got soaked, so we had to start again. And then Daisy was sick too with a fever. Only a little bit of fever, don't worry, she's fine now. Annette had to get his first tattoo, so there was all that to organise. You'll be amazed when you talk to them. They're doing so well, and they send their love, of course. Listen to me, burble away. All these excuses. I'm really sorry, Mum. It can't be nice, waiting and not knowing what's going on. I'll make it up to you, promise. We'll meet the others. Auntie Prim will be so happy. We'll have a good old chat, a proper get-together. You'll like that, won't you? Oh, Mum, we need to get you organised. How have you got yourself into this state? If I was in a mess like this, you wouldn't be very pleased, would you? I'd get my backside slapped, no messing, and told I was a disgrace to the family. Look at you. Come on then. That's it, hands first. Oh, here's some gossip. Old Salter got himself named again, by one of the Owler's women, would you believe? Then she's only gone and produced twins 2 months after the matching. But people are just amazed that Salter's able at his age. Imagine, 30. So the scandal's sort of drowned out by the general, hilarity, you might say. Nice babies. I got to hold them before the Owler took Salter back to her village. 2 squishy and squiggly boys. One with a kink in its eye and a rash all over. Think it will last, though. Let's have that foot. I'm not happy about the weather we're going to get along the way. The cold river's not running like it did last time. Server Ash. Yes, your little girl's talking to servers now. She asked me at the end of the party if it was flowing, and I had a good look, but it wasn't there yet. I could see warm fluffs and fish scales way up above them. The pike's been thrashing her tail. But no cold river. Even so, the wind's gone gusty from Sunrise Way and strong as well, so new rain's coming on to break the summer heat. I told them that, and they all nodded and didn't say anything. It's really weird when you're talking and everyone's faces are turned towards you, all those eyes glittering, so many people hoping for good news. You start to hear your own voice and it sounds all little and squeaky. But I must have confidence, that's what Severash says. She won't allow me any self-pity. Which is good, I suppose. When I stepped up onto the platform, it took me a moment to get going, and she gave me a really hard poke in the arm and said, "Gilly," she said, "you have a duty. Remember who you are." So I spoke, and everyone listened. We might have to trudge through some serious mud this time. It'll be alright, but Daisy will need carrying from time to time. But it's worth it, isn't it, Mum? To get us all together. You and Auntie and Nan and me and Daisy having a good old natter. We had fun last time, didn't we? And now Daisy's old enough to go. She'll love meeting them all. Anyway, the bread. You were so right about the flour. That's the benefit of experience. 3 of the men and half the village were throwing up for a week. I'd love to know how you could have seen that happening. Not that you'd tell me. Can you sort of bend your... that's it. Tight fit. Always is, isn't it? Now then, there's some other big news. We're going to be building again. I know it seems like it never stops these days, but apparently it's going to be a massive job this time. All because Hardfist managed to make the tribes agree to the boundaries. She's amazing. And everyone's pitching in, the owlers, hawkers, the bears and the boars. Sounds like a song, doesn't it? I reckon that's about half the people in the whole world. Do you remember when you took me along to her mother's when it was being made? We went right at the end of the work and you showed me the grass going on the top and the water being poured over the stones at the front. I'll never forget it. I must have been about Daisy's age, running around and getting underfoot, and I was frightened of the servers because they were so pale and so tall and so very old compared with a keeper like Yarrow, and their hands felt cold when they pushed me out of the way. And that was because they'd been putting their hands into the stream to get the water. I still can't imagine doing that. What happens if you can't take your hands out and the Pike's children grab you and the stream carries you away to the other place before your time? You would float there like a big, like some fish, but still alive, and that's a horrible thought. I sometimes have a bad dream about being eaten bit by bit while I'm trapped in the sour water. I'm not supposed to have those sorts of dreams, so I don't tell Yarrow, but I can tell you, Mum. Anyway, you need to know about this pot I've had made. Sling did it. He's been allowed to set up under the big tree with his fire and smoke going day after day and the pots standing around as if they were his kids. He's got airs about him now. Thinks he's something special because he knows the way to do this one bit of usefulness. Sorry, I know I shouldn't speak like that, but it's the way he is. He looked up when he saw me walking towards him, and I didn't like the eye he gave me. Too much of the ram in that look. But he's good with coiling up and smoothing the clay to make the pots, and he's clever with the shapes he makes on them. I will say it's curious to see how they go into the fire all soft and ready to flop apart as if they were made of grey skin. And then the stag in the flames hardens them and they come out with a colour and a use. This one he's made for us has a shape of a door on it in different places, and the shape of ripples on the water running around under the lip. It made me nervous when I first saw it. I wondered if it was bad luck to have it made like that. But Yarrow says it's permitted and I can use it. But after the trip, we have to break it into pieces and put those in the village ditch. So I feel alright about it now, and I'm sure you'll like it. Look, see? It's a heavy old thing, but It will fit into a hide-carrying bag, and I found a good clump of green reeds and I've split and twisted them into a rope to go across my chest so I can keep the bag against my side and it won't bump about too much. That will leave my hands free to deal with Daisy. Ned doesn't help look after her very much these days, especially with him having to get his second tattoo. Though, to be fair, that's not on his mind so much. I think he's worried about leaving the village and going into the big house. I hope he'll fit in. There's nothing wrong, Mum, but he's quieter than them and he never talks on and on like some of the other boys about what they're going to kill or who they've... Well, never mind. He's not as bothered as they are. He's tall now, as tall as me, and I think he'll be taller still. He still lets me comb his hair sometimes, like you used to. But I was telling you about getting the pot. I'd picked it up and I was feeling the dusty red of it, and Sling was watching me and he had that look in his eye. So I was about to say something when I heard Server Ash call me. She'd come to us the week before and holed up with Berry most of the time, but now she was sitting under Sling's tree, and of course he wasn't about to ask her to move off. He has a bit of sense at least. So he just went back inside his store place and pulled the door across after him. Ash sat there on the ground. She had her long, thin legs stretched out, so undignified, I thought, and her back against the trunk, her eyes shut like she was dreaming. "Come here, Gilly," she called. I didn't want to go to her, but you can't ignore a server, so I walked over and stood looking down at her. She patted the ground beside her. "Sit here," she said. I obeyed, wondering what she wanted. She kept her eyes closed for a while, and when she opened them, she didn't look at me, but instead she gazed away past the edge of the world. "How old are you now, Gilly?" she asked. "Old enough," I said, although I was sure she knew anyway. "How do you feel about growing up?" I stared at her. How was I supposed to feel? She might as well have asked me how I felt about having fingers and toes. "I expect you would have liked to name someone by now," she said. "The other girls you grew up with found their man. But then again, we haven't made things easy for you, asking you to find and follow the cold river, am I right?" She turned to me. Her pale grey eyes were sharp and clear. I felt a touch of fear, but I'm bolder these days. "It's an honour," I said. She laughed a little. "It's an honour and a burden," she said. "I think there are few amongst the men who would welcome a naming from you now, our little cloud watcher. Maybe if we sent you to another tribe." "I'm happy here," I said, quickly. "I like living with my friends and my brother and sister." "You look after them well," she said. "But that's not the only reason, is it? I think you would like to be a keeper for a tribe, like Yarrow was here. For the otters. Maybe even a server, eventually. Do I guess right?" "Who wouldn't want to be a server, Mum? To have their long life and wisdom and the right to go where you want and eat at whose fire you please, and to see the women and men bow to you and obey? Every little girl talks about being a server. Most grown women smile and say there are more things in life than that sort of power. And as for living a long, long time, well, there are chances enough to fall on any day of any year. The waters will bear us away when they choose. The women who say all that may be wise, but they've named their men and they've sealed themselves to the earth with their blood, and to the skies with their voices, crying out like animals in the dark. It's a hard bargain, giving and getting power, said Ash, as though she could hear my thoughts. She shifted her back away from the tree and rummaged in a pouch. Look at this, she said, holding something out to me. I didn't understand it at all, Mum. It was a thing like I'd not seen before, and I didn't know the use of it. I saw a little round piece of cut bone that had been pierced along its edge and stuck with many small ivory needles. It lay in her cupped hands, looking like the eye of a flower with lots of thin, pointy petals. Another stem of ivory ran through its middle. Ash took it between her finger and thumb and spun it on a flat stone. It whirled for a while and then dipped to one side and lay still. It's like a spinner stone, I said, and I clapped my hands. But it was too small to pull down on a woolen thread and twist it. Ash took another one of the spinning things out of her pouch, but she didn't whirl it. She lifted it up in her left hand for me to see, her fingers pinching the stem, holding it upright with the little needle sticking out around it. She picked up the first one with her right hand and turned it on its edge, moving the two things together until their needles touched, right in front of my eyes. "What do you think would happen if I turned this one?" she asked me, nodding towards her right hand. It was such an odd question, Mum. Obviously the thing in her right hand would turn like a stick rubbed between your fingers, like when Sling makes a dimple in a pot. And the thing in her left hand would turn the other way because they would stick together. "One goes one way, one goes the other," I said. "Let's see," she said. She rubbed the fingers on her right hand and both the things turned the way I said they would. I looked from her hands to her face and back again. I shrugged, which I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. It was such a so what moment. She waited as if she expected me to say something else. Then she smiled and put the things away. She lay back against a tree and then closed her eyes. "Haven't you got somewhere to go with that pot?" she asked. And that was that. What a waste of time. There you are, Mum. I think we're all done now. I hope you're comfortable. I haven't quite been able to get all your toe bones in. One hand is sticking up beside your foot, and it's just the top of your head and the bits where your eyes were, looking out over the rim. But you'll be fine. It's a good, strong pot. It will keep you safe, and if it rains I can cover it with a goat skin to keep you dry. Then when we get back, I'll put you together with the rest of you and roll the door in front of your little room, down there in the otter's house. We've a long journey ahead, but at least I know which way to take everyone. That's my last job here, before we start the walk towards the uplands. I have to stand on the platform again, at the top of the wall, and mark the way the cold river is flowing and then point to where we go. All the women, and the men, and the children will see where I'm sending them, and they will believe me, even though they can't see what I can see. Do you know, in a way, being trusted like that feels as good as naming a man, I suppose. Now, it's just a matter of starting out. The Sky Machine is written by Martin Lidderman and performed by Phoebe Lawrence. Music by Purple Planet Music, Daniel Birch and the Pangolins. Special thanks to Stratford Youth Theatre, which provides high quality drama workshops for children and young people in and around Stratford-upon-Avon. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can listen to the first season at skymachine.podbean.com or search for Sky Machine on any of the major podcast platforms.